Hey everybody, welcome back to Change Starts Here Research Conversations. I'm Jennifer Chevalier and I'm here with Kim Yaris and Eve Miller. As you may remember in our previous episodes of this season, we shared that we, like many of you, have been thinking a lot about academic achievement and what can be done to reverse the downward trends schools have been seeing in recent years.
Yes, so in the first episode, we talk about executive function and its role in academic achievement and the overlap between those skills and future readiness. And then in our second episode, we got into just how pervasive these executive functions are and how they sometimes when we start talking about these things, we're like, oh, I want to do that, but it feels like just one more thing. Now here we are, ready to talk about our next topic.
That's right. And we are very excited about this next topic. And it is the first competency that we're leading out with. And why this one is so important, we're talking about self-awareness. It's foundational to every other competency we're going to be talking about in this season. And today we're going to focus on the role it plays specifically in executive functioning and academic achievement, but it is foundational to so many other aspects of our growth. So there's so many places we could go with it, but we're really targeting in on academics and executive functioning today. And so to do this, I was thinking that it might be fun to play a little thought experiment, kind of like a little game. Would y'all be up for
that? I love a game.
Oh, yeah. You're a mad scientist, so you never know what we're getting into, Kim.
Okay. I was thinking about self-awareness and like what we could compare it to. So if I can have you imagine that when we get done with this podcast, you have the task of going and writing a summary about it, okay? Just like 3 to 5 sentences. You're going to go sit down at your computer and just write out a summary of what we talked about here today, okay?
All right, pretty easy.
Simple enough, right?
Yeah.
But there's one issue. So for you, Kim, you're going to be sitting in front of the computer and your keyboard's going to work, but your monitor is not going to work. So imagine trying to write and you cannot see what you're writing. How accurately do you think you'd be able to assess the quality of what you're writing when you're writing that piece?
Well, I'd like to think I'm that good a typist and that good a thinker. However, I think that I might be kind of mortified when I'm actually able to see my screen again. I think that I would probably have made a lot of typos. And I think it might be a little bit frustrating too.
Yeah, fair enough. But you wouldn't know, right?
Right. Not until afterwards.
And fair enough. I think I get off my keys like by one, like once or twice a day. And I'm like, oh my goodness, ASJK. Okay, now Jennifer.
Yes.
Now you are going to be able to see your monitor.
Awesome.
You're welcome. But when you write, there's going to be kind of a delay, kind of this unnecessary delay. So you're not going to be really clear on what you're actually writing at that time because it's not going to accurately reflect what you are typing. How do you think that would impact your ability to assess your overall writing quality?
So I've had this happen before where like I put the S on the end of the word and I look up and it's not there and I hit it again and I keep going and then suddenly there are like 2 or 3 S's going. I would be really irritated by that. I do not like unnecessary delays and it would cause mistakes. Not that I wouldn't already be making mistakes, but definitely my accuracy and quality would not be there.
Yes. Yeah. No, same. And I've actually had that issue with my computer now is my keyboard's been busted and it just like sticks and stuff. So thank you for playing along, y'all. So what this represents, this kind of thought experiment, and for listeners at wherever you're listening from, if you're imagining this with us, like that monitor or the inaccurate monitor, we can compare it to self-awareness or a lack of self-awareness. And it can kind of give us a sense of what role it plays in our ability to assess our world. So when we are aware of feeling a strong emotion, but we don't really understand why, or if we know that we're feeling something, but we don't know what it is, like the more accurately we are able to say, I'm feeling angry because of this, or I am thinking this, or I need to spend more time working on that, because self-awareness it is our monitor of ourselves and how we interact with the world. We might be feeling something, but we can't see it well enough to understand why when we have these busted monitors.
All right. So hearing what you just described, I can see that self-awareness is really important, Eve. And I actually came across some research. Did you know that we generally think we are more self-aware than we actually are? There was a researcher and psychologist named Tasha Eurich who reported in the Harvard Business Review from her 2018 study that 95% of the respondents indicated that they had a high level of self-awareness, when in actuality, only 15% of them did.
Oh, okay. Wow.
I read that study too, and all throughout it, I kept questioning myself. I'm like, all right, how accurate am I? And interestingly, we put out a poll prior to this podcast on social media, asking people to rate their their self-awareness on a scale of 1 to 5. And the people that participated, 64% of them rated themselves in the middle. Whereas 9% thought they were completely unaware, and 9% thought they were completely self-aware. So our crowd is kind of riding somewhere in the middle. And I'm just thinking to myself, I probably would have put a 3 also.
Right.
Yeah, and that little slip you made, Kim, really cracked me up, because honestly, on social media, a lot of people do lack self-awareness with what they say. So when you transpose those words, it was kind of funny and correct.
Exactly.
What I think is so interesting about this statistic that you shared, Jennifer, and what you found there, Kim, but more to what you found, I mean, also guilty. Like, when you shared them, like, I know that I would have rated myself as highly self-aware, but when I think about it, all the times when I'm like, how am I perceived? What am I feeling right now? Like, why didn't I question, and think through like how to schedule my time? And it really helps us to get at, like, it is so essential and this gap between how important it is and how few of us have actually really developed like this strong self-awareness really matters, because it is the foundation of our ability to know things like, well, for students, for example, like they can know how much time they need to put into studying for a test. So kind of that like metacognitive piece of self-awareness. Or they might know that they are off track and the teacher's been sharing instructions and their mind's been wandering. That's a part of self-awareness, right? It's our thoughts, our emotions. It's like a lot of the labels that we put ourselves and like how we think others think about us and how accurately we do all those things. So if we're inaccurately thinking about how we fit into the world and with others, or inaccurately understanding our emotions, that can have big consequences on our academics and on our life. So there's a lot of this that's really goal-driven and really important. So that gap is concerning. So I think it's so great that we're talking about this and the role it plays.
Well, you talking about this is just bringing me right back to my experience as a former middle school English language arts teacher, right? Yeah. And I am remembering this one moment in particular when I had one of my 6th grade boys come into the classroom, and he was just coming from science class, I think it was, and he had not done well on a test. And I said to him, "Oh, I'm sorry. Why do you think that happened?" And his first response was, "I don't think the teacher likes me." And I said, "Do you think it could be anything else?" And then he kind of thought about it for a moment, and he's like, "I don't know, maybe, I guess I I don't always pay attention in the class. And so we were just having this conversation about it. And I'm just kind of identifying that now as a moment of, I don't know, maybe practicing or building self-awareness.
Oh yeah, no, that's interesting. That example, it reminds me of actually the same researcher that you, Jennifer, cited earlier, that Uric from Harvard. Some of her research, her lab's research around self-awareness, what they have found is the people who are really self-aware do something differently to develop the self-awareness. So there you were, like, trying to help your student grow his self-awareness in that moment of like, why might you be feeling this way? And that's a common thing I think a lot of us think is like, why am I feeling so upset right now? Why didn't I get that done in time? But what they found is that people who are really high in self-awareness, the questions they ask start with what more than why. So what was I doing instead of studying? Or what could I do? Or what caused me to feel this way? So it's just kind of an interesting way of expanding out instead of contracting, which is what why does. It really kind of is an ineffective way of taking on a strategy, while what kind of expands out the possibilities. I thought that was fascinating.
So it is. And it's making me think to myself, oh, I wish I could go back in time, right? I think with this information, I could do this so much better.
Oh, yeah.
Right. So I'm like, all right. So just kind of replaying that situation in my head, the question, what? So that same student comes into the classroom and he's like, oh, I didn't do very well on that test. And instead of me saying, well, why do you think that happened? I could say, what happened? Or what are you going to do next time to do better? Or what are you going to do right now? What does this create for you? I mean, I have a whole list of what questions that I could ask and potentially in my mind that I could see having very different outcomes. Like it would help him to be focused on the future and what he could actually do to be different going forward.
Right. And it's something that he can take control over. Well, why? As you were saying that, I felt like there's almost like a negative energy tied to it, like a negative emotion rather, that's tied to those words at times, right? Like, well, what? It really does open us up. And as you said, like it's more future focused, it's action oriented. And I agree with you. I wish, research, this is why I love research. Like the things I learned, I go, well, I didn't know that then. That would have been helpful, but I know it now. So how can I apply it? I think that's, really powerful.
Do the best that you can until you know better. And then when you know better, do better. Thank you, Maya Angelou.
That's right. I think of that quote almost every day. It's a self-compassion practice to say that.
So I'm hearing you guys say that we can build students' self-awareness and help them be more reflective and monitor their behavior to develop that self-awareness. But we also said at the beginning of this episode that self-awareness is critical to academics and academic performance. So how does this connect to helping students improve academically?
I love that question. I love that question because right, we can get into these big ideas, right? And what I think of is what we ultimately want, what we know works best for students and their learning is when they can be empowered with that learning, when they can have the choice and voice, right? Like that can feel like this pie in the sky when we're having to make sure that certain things are done and criterias are met and protocols are met. But really, the more that we can turn the learning over to them by engaging them in self-reflection, it not only builds their self-awareness, but it also gives them the opportunity to see the what. And you as a teacher, you as the administrator don't have to guide every one of their whats. They start to learn how to dissect their own actions and choose better ones when needed, or to understand what situations they work better under, what emotions might come up for them. So it's a pathway And I think of it almost like there's co-regulation, right? As a student or a child is learning to control their emotions, but there's also like this self-awareness where you're helping them, giving them the building blocks. And I think reflection is so key, like offering them practices that allow them to reflect in ways that are empowering to them, that are actionable, like the what questions.
So I could see how adults modeling this for students would be another great way to help them develop their own self-awareness. And so from like a school or district leadership perspective, I'm thinking about times that I helped colleagues process a conversation with a parent, for example, that didn't go too well. I'm sure we can all cite times when we had a conversation that didn't go as expected and kind of ended up a little messy. And my inclination was always to say, like, why do you think that didn't go well? Why do you think it, resulted in what it did? But this conversation is helping me realize that even as we work with adults, we could be framing everything with what questions to empower them and give them new insights so that they can act differently moving forward. So instead of the why, more of like, well, here's the situation now. Like, what can you do now to start, bridging this communication failure and like restoring that relationship and the communication instead of the focusing on like what caused it, focusing on what to do next.
Yeah. So my takeaway, as I'm thinking about this, is that shift from why to what. One, it's really simple, but two, it's just so powerful in what it brings to building that executive function, that foundation that kids need in order to get those better results that they're looking for in terms of academics.
Yeah, I can see how it lays the foundation for those executive functions like metacognition and self-reflection, goal-directed persistence, all of those skills that students need to succeed in school and in life, right?
Yeah. Wow. Yeah. This is so great. And we'll link that Harvard Business Review article in the show notes. So be sure to check that out if you want to learn more about this. And sadly, ladies, we are at time. Once again, it's always too soon. So thank you for this great conversation together. And thank you, listeners, for joining us. And please come back again in 2 weeks when we will be taking on the Competency Initiative. And how it really helps students with executive functioning and academic achievement in schools. So thank you so much.
Awesome. Bye, everybody.
Please support us by subscribing to our YouTube channel, podcast on Apple or Spotify, and help us celebrate the beautiful, messy work of shaping human potential.